This program is a production of Film Music Radio, the home of film music on the Internet.
I'm Daniel Schweiger, and welcome to On the Score, the show on Film Music Radio where we hear the words and music of Hollywood's best composers. When it comes to the Newman film scoring dynasty, Thomas Newman might be the odd composer out. Father Alfred was a master of the big Hollywood score, a tradition most famously carried on by his brother David and cousin Randy. And while Tom has certainly had his share of majestic orchestras, it's the brilliantly experimental nature of his scores that make this Newman stand out. Even when he was starting on such inspired teen indie flicks as Reckless, Desperately Seeking Susan, Revenge of the Nerds, and Real Genius, Thomas Newman's work had a diverting sense of rhythm and invention, a left-field approach that somehow was embraced by a scoring world known for hitting it on the nose. With the mix of orchestra, ethnic instruments, and sound effects, Thomas Newman has given an off-the-wall vibe to such projects as Unstrung Heroes, The Salton Sea, and Jarhead, an oddball quality that's never failed to make it into such beautifully mainstream scores as Meet Joe Black, The War, and The Horse Whisperer. From the rustic Americana of Fried Green Tomatoes and The Shawshank Redemption to the funk percussion of his Oscar-nominated score to American Beauty, Thomas Newman has always set the trend for the next scoring sound, all with a traditional sense of melody and theme work that does his father Alfred proud. But if there's one place that really seems to fit Thomas Newman's surreal sensibilities, then it's in the residential heart of America, a land of well-manicured houses and frazzled lives that he and director Todd Field visited last with In the Bedroom. Now they take another beautifully skewed look at the dreams of everyday parents and little children, a whimsical, poignant, and disturbing look at suburbia. Now joining us from his studio is composer Tom Newman. Thanks for joining us at On the Score.
Thank you so much.
So with your family history, was it almost predestined that you would be going into music?
Probably not. If anything, it was just the opposite. It was such a long shadow that I feared I would just never amount to much, and I kind of backdoored into composing for film.
Tell me a little bit about your musical education.
Well, I studied piano and violin growing up. I don't think I was exceptionally good at either, probably worse at violin than at piano. Although I think in retrospect, I probably had a pretty good touch on the piano. I think I touched instruments probably better than I played them. And I guess by that I mean I think I had a sense of gesture and phrase, but probably less a sense of technique. And then I went to college. I went to USC for 2 years, transferred to Yale as a junior, and got a Bachelor's of Arts degree at Yale, and went on and got a Master's of Music there. And I graduated in 77 and then in 78.
Now, I can imagine when you were a kid, you were probably hanging out in your father's room watching him work.
Yeah, but probably fairly passively. I don't know that my interest was so piqued that I would go and just really pore over what he was doing. It was very much a background in my life, and it was a wonderful background, but it wasn't something that I yearned and longed for and felt, destined to be a part of by any means.
So film music was something you would just like enjoying the movie as opposed to listening to it on its own?
I think so. I mean, if I learned anything in retrospect, it's that, we listen on multiple levels, and I think I was always a pretty good listener. I'm not sure I ever knew that, but when I look back, I think I probably was a good listener. And again, you have to learn what listening is, and I think as I got older, I kind of started to understand that.
How much was music discussed in your family gatherings when everyone would see everybody else?
Well, I mean, my dad died when I was 14, so there was, he was very much a figurehead and a kind of a governor of a big clan family. And I don't think he shared music much with us. I mean, he was a much older man by the time I was born and was growing up. When he died, I think my interest in music started getting more acute, ironically and probably fairly obviously. And my brother Dave and I, my sister Maria, we would talk about music a lot and share ideas and stuff. And there was much playing at the piano. There was a lot of interest in musical theater. Dave conducted a lot of community and high school shows, and I played in them or performed in some. And I think I always had an interest in drama, probably that came more from theater than from film. And I guess what's interesting to me, again in retrospect, is my father kind of began in in the theater. So I think, in a way, his sense of drama really did develop from live theater.
But I think the thing that makes you stand out as a composer is almost how revolutionary your music was, especially when you started doing some great teen comedies like Grandview USA and Revenge of the Nerds. Do you think that came from your background playing in rock groups, or?
I guess so. I mean, it certainly gave me a sense of how to have a voice, or it started me on a path to having a voice. I mean, I knew on a certain level that going down the path of classical music, standing with a baton on a podium was probably not the way for me to break in. And so I guess some of my early experiences in rock and roll and contemporary music started, again, getting me to listen differently, and then to apply that sense of listening to a sense of drama, and, to, I guess, also accommodating or being aware of my time and place, that this was the 80s, and my dad had worked in the, 30s through the 60s. And it kind of inspired me to try to find my own unique voice.
Do you think there was a common vibe to the comedies you were scoring early in your career?
You mean to the movies or to my music?
To your music and to the films.
Well, I suppose so. I mean, they were steeped in their own time, and, MTV was just starting to happen, so there were tons of songs. But I think more than that, when you're beginning your career, you just do what you can do, not necessarily what you want to do or what you feel you should do. So, I started where I started and kind of used the tools that were available to me.
Now, our first suite is going to be from comedy scores. It's going to be from Desperately Seeking Susan, The Man with One Red Shoe, and Cookie. And they all have a very distinctive vibe. In Susan, you really feel the sense of wonder of coming to New York City. And the Man with One Red Shoe, you actually use animal noises. And Cookie has a very dainty, toy-like sound to it.
It probably all those things were more just who I was around and what things that I was kind of whimsically discovering than any kind of grand design. I think, on a certain level, you face these movies with a certain degree of brute fear, and you're just trying to solve the problems that are presented to you in as elegant a way as you can. So, I guess I can look back and on them now, 20 or some odd years later, and think, wow, they were doing something. But at the time, I was just trying not to get fired.
There's a real sense of percussion and motion to these early scores, and also real lightness that you haven't really gotten since. In terms of the subject material that you've been offered.
Right. You mean just the tone of the movies I work on?
Yeah, these very whimsical, fun, lightweight movies.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just probably, again, the circumstance of the opportunities that are put in front of you. It's one good thing about being a film composer is your sense of chameleonic kind of adaptation, that you try to be empathetic to a tone and a feeling that a movie, gives you, and write to it. And it's funny because, in the more recent movies, I really feel that anyone's sense of personality, my sense of personality, wants to be kind of subjugated by the subject matter. I feel it's harder and harder for me to insert necessarily my own personal style as much as really trying to adapt to the style of the film and take my sensibility away. That sounds confusing, but nevertheless.
Do you miss teen comedies?
I don't know that I miss them. They're fun. I think what I liked about them is that they allowed me to get in front of people that I like to play music with, drums and bass and guitar, and not that I don't still use those elements, but that was really fun. In those days, you could really get together and have a drummer and get drum sounds and snare sounds and stuff like that, or even horn sections. That doesn't seem as prevalent today somehow. It's funny how we move forward in time and things are plausible or they're less plausible, and we don't really know why. We just kind of go with it.
Here's the 80s teen comedy sound of composer Tom Newman, Desperately Seeking Susan's New York City by Day, and music from The Man with One Red Shoe and Cookie.